Honestly, I never thought a series like this would ever be released. But heck, we're in 2022 and crazier things are happening. Pam and Tommy. Now, Pam and Tommy basically follow the story of the release of the Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee sex tape. And in the show, we follow the release of the build-up of the sex tape and also the aftermath surrounding that release. And at the same time, though, we also follow the characters which the story connects to. Like, we follow the character of Rand, played by Seth Rogen in the show, who's a person who actually steals sex tape and puts it out there. And at the same time, though, we also follow his connections with a famous adult film director in the show, who's played by Offerman, and we also follow his connections with his ex-wife in the show, who's played by Schilling, who is also a porn star. And at the same time, though, we also follow, Pamela Anderson, played by Lily James in the show, and Tommy Lee, played by Sebastian in the show. And basically, we follow all the build-up to the release of the sex tape between them two. You see them get married in the show. But at the same time, though, you also follow the aftermath of the release of that sex tape, and how that sex tape kind of ruined their lives. But anyway, that's basically the plot of Pam and Tommy, and there's a bit more to it than that, but that's the general plot of the show. And honestly, I really enjoyed this show, and I didn't expect to whatsoever. In fact, I didn't really know what to expect when I sat down to watch the first episode. When did it start? I think it was January it started. I didn't really know what to expect. And actually, I really enjoyed myself. I think this is a really enjoyable show, and I think it's got a lot to offer. Now, I don't really think it quite reached the height that it sets out at the start of the show. Like, it feels like it wants to be a drama more than it is, in my opinion. And I still think it's got a lot of emotional and moving moments in there. But at the same time, though, it's not quite the drama I think it wants to be. I think a lot of this show, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think a lot of this show is made up in the edit. And actually, I think that, Lily James and Sebastian as Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee carry a lot of the show. And that's not to say that the other performances are bad, but, those two performances, Lily James as Pamela Anderson and Sebastian as Tommy Lee, really make this show shine, in my opinion. Honestly, those two are absolutely fantastic. But like I said before, I don't really think the show is as good as it wants to be. I personally didn't have a huge connection with it, but I did enjoy watching it. I did, though. Every single episode, when it released weekly on Disney Plus for me, because I'm in the UK, every single episode when I saw it weekly, I would really, really enjoy it. I'd look forward to watching it about 8 o'clock in the morning, like I usually do, and only sit down my breakfast and then only watch an episode of Pam and Tommy. What a weird way to start a Wednesday. But nevertheless, that's what happened with me. And you know what? I look forward to every Wednesday sitting down to watch Pam and Tommy in the morning, because it was fun, it was enjoyable, there was a sort of energy with it. And at the same time, though, it was emotional, it was moving, it was poignant, and I didn't know the story. I'd vaguely heard about the story like a comedy talk show years and years ago, but I didn't really take any note of it. And then when I heard that this show was happening, you had people like Lily James, Sebastian Stan, Seth Rogen, Offerman, and so on and so on, attached to this show. I was like, wow, this might be something special. And then the show comes out, and it is actually something which I didn't expect would ever be made. But nevertheless, we're here, we're in 2022, and like I said before, crazier things have happened. And honestly, I really enjoyed, like I said before, and I sound like a bit of a broken record there, but I did enjoy it. And I think one of the reasons I enjoyed it so much is because it could have easily been a comedy. This could have easily been made into a comedy. This whole story of this guy who's got a background in porn, who's a construction builder, and basically he's doing some construction for Tommy Lee, and he ends up, nicking the sex tape and releasing it online. This could have all been a comedy, and the way it plays out, it could have all been really, really mean to the people involved. But actually, it's not. It's a drama, and you really feel connection with these characters. I mean, some more than others, and I will go on to that a bit later in this review. But nevertheless, you do really feel connections to these characters. Like, the way Lily James plays Pam Anderson is fantastic. And also, that leads me on to another point, by the way. This show had already met some criticism way before it came out, because basically, Pam Anderson herself didn't really give consent of this show being made. But the thing is, though, that's not the first time that's ever happened in Hollywood. Honestly, Take a look at the example of Green Book, which won Best Picture at the 2018 Oscars. Green Book came out, and I haven't actually seen Green Book, but what I do know about that film is that it is based on a true story. And basically, the people who the true story is based on, the people of the real life events which Green Book is based on, they don't approve of that film being made, and yet it won Best Picture at the Oscars in what I think was 2018. I think it was 2018. And then you also look at the example of House of Gucci. Say all about House of Gucci. Man alive, that is a weird film. But nevertheless, say all about House of Gucci. But I'm pretty sure the Gucci family didn't really give consent of the film being made, or at least the story being told in the movie. But then you get to this, and suddenly Pamela Anderson is not really giving consent of the TV show, and that's fine, by the way, but there's this huge uproar online like, oh my god, Pamela Anderson is not giving consent of this show being made, let's tear it down, let's make sure no one watches it. But the thing is though, that's not a bad thing. It's not the first time that's ever happened. And in the end, this show shows all the characters in quite an objective light. I'm not really sure if that's the right way, but none of the show is biased. And actually, I have heard that Pamela Anderson will actually get her chance, tell her story in a Netflix documentary coming sometime next year, I'm pretty sure. And that's great. But the thing is though, as good as documentaries can be, and as objective as it can be, in the end, they're not actually that objective most of the time. Quite a lot of the time, documentaries you watch will be told from a biased point of view. And in the end, if Pamela Anderson is getting a chance to make a documentary about herself, she's going to leave things out. And the thing is though, yes, this show isn't always kind to Pamela Anderson, but it doesn't leave things out at the same time though. And actually, I do think for the most part, that this show is sympathetic to Pamela Anderson. It's not making fun of her. In fact, I think Lily James really brings that out in a performance. Honestly, Lily James is someone I'm not a huge fan of as an actress. I mean, I don't mind her, but the thing is though, in the films I've seen her in, like Mummy, Here We Go Again, Yesterday by Danny Boyle, Pride and Prejudice Zombies, and also, what's the other one I've seen her in? Cinderella as well, Kind of Cinderella. The films I've seen her in, quite a lot of times she plays the same character. And sometimes her performance can work in those films. I don't mind Lily James, an actress. I do think she's enjoyable to watch, but at the same time though, quite a lot of time in the past, like I said before, she played the same character. But actually in this show, her performance is so outstanding. Honestly, it's so brilliant. And if I was the Emmys, I would nominate her, I would give her all the awards, because honestly, she is so good in this show. She doesn't just play the same character over and over again in rom-coms and whatnot. She can be a really good actress, and this show really showcased that. Honestly, Lily James' performance gave so much more to the Pamela Anderson character in this show. And actually, I've seen, Lily James in an interview recently talk about how much she actually admires Pamela Anderson and how much she actually loves her as a human being, and you can really feel that in her portrayal of, that real life person in this show. Honestly, Lily James adds so much more sympathy into this character than I think the show actually does in its writing. And by the way, I'm not saying the writing doesn't, and I'm not saying the writing's bad either, but I think Lily James elevated that Pamela Anderson character arc in the show to be something else, and just something so good. Because the thing is though, I was so interested in the Pamela Anderson character in the show. I was so interested in the way they portrayed her, and that's not really because of the writing, it's because of Lily James' performance. Honestly, I cannot say enough good things about her, and I don't really care about Pamela Anderson. All I knew before I watched the show, which was on Baywatch, because I'd watched Friends a couple of years ago, but that's all I really knew about Pamela Anderson. And then you watching the show, and Lily James really brings out a different side to her. Honestly, like I said before, I cannot say enough good things about Lily James in this show. She's absolutely fantastic. And like I said before, I know some people are a bit critical of this show because, Pamela Anderson herself didn't give consent to the show being made. But that's not the first time it's happened in Hollywood, and also this show presents her in such a sympathetic light. You watch it, and you feel sympathy for Pam Anderson. You even feel a bit of sympathy for Tommy Lee, and I'll get onto that a bit later, but you even feel a bit of sympathy for him. And by the way, I don't actually know if he gave consent, but you feel sympathy for these characters when the sex tape gets released. You feel sympathy for them, and you're aligned with them through so much of the show, and I just think that shines in, Lady James' performance as Pam Anderson, and also the writing, and also just the way the show presents Pam Anderson. This is not a show that's criticising Pam Anderson. This is not a show which is making fun of her. No, this is a show which is showing Pam Anderson in a sympathetic light, and you know what? It worked for me. Honestly, I think this show did an absolutely great job showing Pam Anderson in such a light where you feel sympathy for her, and you're aligned with her, and I really got interested in that character, which I didn't expect to whatsoever. And also, like I said before, I really know the story, and honestly, you're watching this story, and you're watching the twists and the turns that go along with it, and it's kind of incredible the way this show ends up. Like, I absolutely loved the finale. I loved loved how the show ended up, and I love that we found out what actually happened after the events of the show as well, because you know it's based on a true story, and then at the end of like a film that's based on a true story, or a TV show that's based on a true story like this one, you know, you get the words at the end, like what happened to the characters past this story, and actually that was really interesting as well. And I just think the show is so fascinating to watch. It's so odd. You're watching it, you're going, wow, didn't expect that to happen, wow, didn't expect that to happen, and there are a few coincidences along the way, which are a bit too coincidental in my opinion. But then the thing is though, you realise, oh my god, this is based on a true story. These things really happened. Tommy Lee, I know it's getting too much away here, but Tommy Lee didn't realise that his sex tape had been stolen for like weeks, and you just watch and you go, wow. I mean, I don't know if that's what really happened, but that's the way the show portrays it, and I really like that about the show. And I thought the whole story, from someone who doesn't really know it, from someone who never knew the story before I watched the show, was so fun and so fascinating to watch. And also, I think the show is well directed. You know, Craig Lepsey directed the first 3 episodes of the show, and if you don't know who Craig Lepsey is, he directed Cruella, which came out last year. By the way, imagine that. Imagine going from a Disney movie like Cruella to Pam and Tommy. I mean, funny enough, both Cruella and Pam and Tommy are both distributed by Disney, but nevertheless, imagine going from Cruella, quite a fun family Disney movie, to Pam and Tommy. That's just so weird. But at the same time though, Craig Lepsey also acted I, Tonya, which I'm a huge fan of. Honestly, I, Tonya is a great film. If you haven't watched it yet, go and check it out. Honestly, Craig Lepsey is a really good director. There's a lot of zooms in his films and his TV shows. And especially in the first 3 episodes of the show, which are the only 3 episodes of this show which he directed, you can clearly tell that those episodes are directed by Craig Lepsey. And honestly, I think he did a great job. In fact, I've got to admit, his direction was so good that actually ruined the direction for the rest of the series. Like, I'm not saying the direction of the rest of the series was bad, but at the same time, no, it didn't live up to the standard of Craig Lepsey's direction for the first 3 episodes. Honestly, you're watching the direction of the first 3 episodes and going, wow, I love the way the filmmaking's been done here, and it's really good, and I'm really buying his characters and their introductions and whatnot. And you get to the rest of like the next 5 episodes, and the direction isn't quite as strong. It's not bad, I'm just saying it's not quite as strong as Craig Lepsey, and I do think some of the direction are really good. Like, I know Lake Bell, who I only know from the film Man Up, and by the way, I hate that movie. Honestly, I found it so hard to watch, so cringeworthy to watch. But the thing is though, Lake Bell, she actually directed, I think, 2 episodes of the series, and she did a really good job. Honestly, I think she directed episode 4, and I was watching episode 4 thinking, you know, Craig Lepsey directed another episode, and then it comes up at the end, directed by Lake Bell. I was like, wow, you wouldn't notice if you didn't know. That was the thing, you wouldn't notice. You think it's done by the same director, and I do think the other director did a good job in the show, but I think Craig Lepsey did the best job, and I kind of wish that he didn't just direct the first 3 episodes. I wish I did all 8 episodes, or like the first 2 episodes, and then did the 8th episode, just to make the direction a bit stronger throughout the whole of the show. But I do think the direction is good, and I really enjoyed watching. And also, the soundtrack is great as well. You know, it uses a lot of songs from like the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, which makes sense because the show takes place in the 90s. And you can clearly tell, you know, Craig Lepsey has put his stamp on this show with the music that is used as well, because it's the same sort of music that was used in Cruella. You know, Cruella had a lot of songs from like the 70s, the 80s in it, which I really liked. And also, the same can be said about I, Tonya. I, Tonya has got that sort of soundtrack where you get like songs, famous songs from like the 70s, the 80s, and 90s as well. And that's the same that happens here. Honestly, I love the music of the show. I must admit, over the past 8 weeks or so, because the show's got 8 episodes and they come out weekly, over the past 8 weeks, I've been listening to the soundtrack to this on Spotify in a playlist. I've been listening to quite a bit actually. I think it's got a really good soundtrack. I don't think the songs are great in every episode, but nevertheless, you know, I do think the soundtrack is really pumping and it fuels the show and it's really fun to listen to, and I really like that. And at the same time though, this show does have emotional moments and you really feel them, and that is all through the performances. This is, in my opinion, Sebastian Stan's best performance as Tommy Lee. Almost said Tommy Lee Jones there. 2 slightly different people, but nevertheless, Sebastian Stan is great in the show. Honestly, he's absolutely fantastic. Playing a slightly similar character than he did in I, Tonya. And by the way, there's another link there. You know, Craig Lepsey directed I, Tonya, and Sebastian Stan was in that film. And Sebastian Stan's in this show. And the first 3 episodes of the show are directed by Craig Lepsey, so a little links there. So anyway, yeah, Sebastian Stan is great in this show, and I really liked his performance because he really believed in that character. And also, you really brought into that relationship between, you know, Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson, and the way Lee James and Sebastian Stan played those characters, you really brought into that relationship, which on the surface sounds like quite a small thing, but it's actually quite a big thing. You know, you can get 2 actors who don't get along whatsoever, and then you don't believe in their relationship in a film or TV show, but actually in this show you do believe in that relationship. And at the same time though, Seth Rogen is great as Rand, the person who steals a sex tape and has got, a bit of a past in porn, but he's also a bit of a construction builder. He's great in the show, and he kind of does that laddish performance where, he's kind of obsessed with, sex and drugs, which you kind of see in his other movies like This Is the End and Knocked Up, neither of which I'm the biggest fan of, by the way, but I actually think he's good in both of those films. But nevertheless, he can have that same performance in this show, but at the same time though, he also brings some of his serious side, which you see him, portray as Steve Wozniak in the Steve Jobs film directed by Danny Boyle. You also see that kind of seriousness to him in this show, and I really like that. I think Seth Rogen brought a lot to this character, and again, it's a character I believe. I never felt like I was watching Seth Rogen the show, I just felt like I was watching the character he was playing, and that's the same with Nick Offerman as this famous adult film director in the show. Honestly, I love Nick Offerman. Bear in mind, I've only really seen him in Parks and Recreation, but his performance as Ron Swanson in season 2 to 6 of Parks and Recreation, or season 2 to 7 actually, sorry, season 2 to 7 of Parks and Recreation is absolutely fantastic. Honestly, he's one of the best TV characters ever, and he's so good in that show. I should actually look and see more Nick Offerman stuff, because I haven't really seen him in much, but nevertheless, he is so good in Parks and Recreation, and he's so funny in this show as well. Honestly, even though it's a drama, and even though it isn't a comedy, there are still some comedic moments in there. There are still some funny moments which are kind of sublime and kind of go under your skin, and you're laughing before you don't even realise it, like The British Office, and you're watching the show, and particularly scenes between Seth Rogen and Nick Offerman, two of the funniest American comedic actors working today. The scenes between those two are really good. Those two are so funny in the show, and watching them together is it's great. I kind of wish we got a bit more of Nick Offerman actually, because although Nick Offerman is in this show, he's not one of the main characters, and I really enjoyed him in there. I just would like to see a bit more of him. At the same time though, Taylor Schilling is great as well. Seth Rogen's ex-wife in the show. You'll be even her character. And all the performances are actually fantastic. And it is a really good watch. It's really enjoyable. I really enjoyed watching each episode. And that sounds like such a small thing. And I know I mentioned it quite a lot in the video already. But the truth is, if you don't enjoy watching something, then what's the point of watching it at all? That was quite deep there, but it's the truth. And I actually really did enjoy this show. And I didn't even know the story. I don't really care about the story. I don't care about a sex tape being released. But actually, this show makes me interested in that story. And by the way, one of the things you should note is the 90s aesthetic of the show is absolutely fantastic. On the surface, that sounds like quite a small thing, but actually it's quite a big thing. If you don't believe in the setting where the show or film takes place, then you don't believe in anything else. But the 90s aesthetic of this show is absolutely fantastic, and it feels realistic. Even seeing Sebastian Stan play Tommy Lee Jones, and when he's playing the drums and things like that, when you see Sebastian Stan as Tommy Lee Jones playing the drums, you believe in that character. And that's something, again, which shouldn't be taken lightly, and actually really works in the show. However, I do have my criticism. Like I said before, I don't think this show quite reaches the height of a drama that it sets out to be. I don't think the show is quite as good as it wants to be, because I do think a lot of the show is made up in the edit, with its song, which I really liked, and it's also its direction. I don't think the writing is particularly amazing. I don't think the writing's bad, but also, in the end, I do feel they're slightly exaggerating a story, which perhaps didn't need to be 8 episodes. It didn't need to be an 8-episode series. It probably could have even been about 4 episodes and be the exact same show, and maybe more tight, more to the point. And I get that in the first 2 episodes or so, they're setting up the romance between Pamela and Tommy Lee. Really meant to believe in their relationship, and you do because of those first 2 episodes. But at the same time, though, I do feel there's a couple of in the show which perhaps weren't needed, and I understand that they're trying to make you believe in the characters a bit more in the situation, but still, the first episode, even so I did enjoy it, I was watching that first episode thinking, it's a bit light on plot. That's what it kind of felt like for me. It's a bit light on plot, that first episode. And I'm not saying the first episode was bad, I enjoyed it, like I said before, but I was waiting for the series to really get rolling, and then episode 2 did, and I really liked episode 2, but even that episode wasn't really needed. It was just setting up the romance between Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson, which was really good, but was that necessarily needed for this show? Was it needed to really make believe in the story? And I suppose in the end it was, when you get to the end of the series, I suppose it was, but at the same time though, I do feel that could have been done shorter. And perhaps, you know, if it was a film, I think it could have been done more to the point. And actually, like the romance in I, Tonya, that's more to the point, and you believe in that romance much quicker because it's a film. And here, they make you really believe in the romance by spending a full episode on it. I'm not sure if that was entirely needed, to be honest. And at the same time, though, I do feel that the show is a bit clunky sometimes, and it doesn't really quite get to the poignant sides of anything. Honestly, sometimes it takes a couple, or sometimes it takes like 40 minutes an episode to really get to the point, and I wish I got there a bit sooner. There's one episode in particular where you're watching, where, you know, Pamela Anderson's going for an inquiry about the sex tape, and like lawyers who are there watching it with her, male lawyers, and it's a really tough episode to watch, but at the same time, though, you don't really feel it until like one stage later in that episode. Not to go too much away there, because I'm about going into spoiler territory, and actually, I'm trying to keep this review spoiler free, but the thing is, though, there's one moment in that episode which is really poignant, but it takes you 40 minutes to get there, and it's just, you know, I wish a show was a bit more tight and a bit more to the point. And also, like most TV shows, like every TV show in fact, some episodes are better than others. And like I said before, personally, my favourite episodes are the first three, because even though they were a bit light on plot, the direction was so good. So I'm actually kind of contradicting myself there. I don't know if you realise that. I'm kind of contradicting to myself. You know, I said the first few episodes were a bit light on plot, and maybe we didn't need them. At the same time, though, they're some of my favourite episodes of the series, and I love the last episode. I love the second to last episode. And I do think there's some episodes in the show which are so good, like so good to watch, and so much fun to watch as well. And Lily Jade's performance is soaring throughout the entire show. But I also feel that there's some episodes which are better than others, and perhaps don't really get to the nitty-gritty stuff as soon as they want to, and don't have that poignant side to them, because they're lacking something in terms of writing or in terms of directing. And if I sat through every single episode of the show, I could probably pinpoint those moments out which I'm talking about. But the thing is, though, I'm not going to, because actually, overall, I really enjoyed this show, and that's what I'm going to take away from it. Because I did not expect to get really anything out of this show, if I'm being honest. I did not expect to enjoy it whatsoever, and then, you know what, I end up enjoying it quite a bit, because I didn't know what to expect. I really didn't. I didn't know what to expect whatsoever. And then when you come out of a show like this, you're sitting there at the end going, wow, I didn't expect that thing to happen, I didn't expect that thing to happen. When you're sitting there at the end of a show like this, I think that's a big praise. You know, like I said before, this show could have easily been a comedy. It could have easily been a comedy where we mock all the characters involved, but actually it's got a lot of, you know, emotional moments and moving moments in there which work really well, and you feel sympathy for Pam Anderson, which I really didn't expect to. And honestly, Lily James is excellent in the show, so is Sebastian, and Seth Rogen, Nick Offerman, and Taylor Schilling were all great in the show, and all the performances stand out. But honestly, it's the things that work for me in the show, such as, you know, Lily James' performance, Pam Anderson, and also the direction, and the enjoyment element, the entertainment element, which make it work for me. By no means is it an amazing drama show. By no means is it like as good as Sopranos or something like that, but it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be. Bear in mind, The Sopranos was a 6-season show, and, you know, this is only 8 episodes. And I think that in 8 episodes, this show was surprisingly good, and it really worked for me, and you really believed in everything, and it was really surprising, and it was a lot of fun to watch, and overall, I thought it was great. I really liked it, even if it felt a bit clunky, and even if it didn't quite reach the heights that it set out to do in terms of quality. I don't think the show is as good as it wants to be, but nevertheless, I still really like it. And for that reason, I'm going to say that is an 8.3 out of 10. Honestly, like I said before, I really enjoyed this show. I've said that quite a lot in the review already, but I did. And that's what kind of surprised me. It's really entertaining. It really is. And it's a story which I didn't know much about. I didn't know anything about what I'm saying. I didn't know anything about whatsoever. And you watch it, and it's oddly compelling. It's oddly compelling, and it's oddly enjoyable. And you're kind of sitting there going, right, I don't know the story, I don't know what's coming next, I don't know the twists and the turns that are coming, but funny enough, you know what, I'm all in for it, and I really like that about this show. And also, one thing I almost got to mention is that actually, I think one of the faults of this show, one of the criticisms of this show that I almost got to mention, is that you actually become a bit more interested in Pamela Anderson's storyline than some of the other storylines in the show. And I think because this show is balancing so many storylines, that's one of the reasons it kind of feels clunky sometimes, but it's also one of the faults of the show because I became far more interested just through Lily James' performance, really. Honestly, Lily James is so good in the show, but yeah, just through her performance, I became more interested in that character than all the other characters in the show. And I'm a huge fan of Seth Rogen. Even in films I don't really like, I really like him in those movies. And also I'm a huge fan of Nick Offerman, and I really like Sebastian as well. I think Sebastian is a great actor. And the thing is though, even though I'm a huge fan of those actors, I became more interested in the Pamela storyline, which I think says a lot about Lily James' performance and a lot about this show as well. And you're trying to juggle all these different storylines, and sometimes it doesn't always work. You become more interested in the Pamela storyline than the other storylines. But nevertheless, so I did still enjoy watching Seth Rogen's storyline. I did still enjoy watching Sebastian Stan's storyline. I did still enjoy watching Nick Offerman's storyline, and I did still enjoy watching Taylor Schilling's character as well. But overall, I think Lily James is a standout of this show. Honestly, she really, really is. And she showed me that she could really act, which I didn't really believe from her before. I've enjoyed her in other films I've seen her before, but this show is evidence that, you know, Lily James shouldn't just have to play the lovable rom-com interest. She can play a real-life person and do it so fantastically. And in a show which, like I said before, is oddly compelling and oddly enjoyable, and actually a really good watch in my opinion. By no means is this show amazing, and by no means does it reach the height as some other dramas which are out there, but it doesn't need to. You know, I compared this show to Sopranos a bit earlier in this review, and I'm not really sure why I did. I'm not sure I did that. I have a bit of a thing with comparing films to TV shows, because like, if people compare The Dark Knight and The Batman, this is slightly off topic, but I'm going to relate it back onto Pam and Tommy Watch Me. But yeah, if you relate The Batman and The Dark Knight, quite a lot of people at the moment going, okay, The Dark Knight's better. But it's not like, you know, if you say that, The Batman's going to completely go away. I don't understand why so many people compare TV shows and films all the time. Like, I compared Pam and Tommy to Sopranos. But I don't know why I did that. I'm not really sure I did that whatsoever. But anyway, yeah, because, you know, in the end, both shows exist. If you say we prefer one over another, it's not like the other one is going to completely obliterate and just be destroyed. You'll never be able to watch the other one again. No. You know, both shows exist, and let's love that. Sopranos exists, and it's absolutely fantastic. And you know what? Pam and Tommy exists, and it's great as well. Slightly off topic there, but you know what? I just wanted to make my point because I was talking about that earlier with someone on the phone. But anyway, overall, I really enjoyed this show. It's got a lot of entertaining value there. It's also emotional. It's moving. Lily James is fantastic about Anderson. So is Sebastian and Tommy Lee. And all in all, it's a great show. And it surprised me about how much I really liked it. It surprised me how much I went along with it. I believed in the characters and how much it actually worked for me overall. And so, all in all, I'm going to say Pam and Tommy, I'm going to say that it's an 8.3 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, what do you think of Pam and Tommy? Please do comment down below and know your thoughts in the comment section below. Anyway guys, thank you as always for watching, and if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this video, and look forward to many more both film and TVs coming very soon on this channel. See you guys again soon, but bye for now, bye!